but journalists must resist the pressure to publish unconfirmed reports, especially if they originate from shady or possibly disreputable sources. Posting and or sharing of false information is now unlawful in Kuwait. Mm-hmm. The Ministry of Interior has recently been outspoken about this and has warned of punitive measures in this regard. It's a big responsibility. Second, contextual reporting is essential. Regional developments often involve complex political, military, and diplomatic factors. By providing background analysis, media outlets help audiences understand what events actually mean for our country, Kuwait. Third, the third point, media organizations should rely heavily on official and authoritative sources of news, such as the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Interior, the Government Communications Center, and the Kuwait News Agency, KUNA, among others, and the official spokesperson, as we mentioned earlier. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Kuwaiti media outlets regularly broadcasted official health briefings and government updates. This approach ensured that the public received consistent and trustworthy information, confusing the public and avoiding misinformation. Another important strategy is the use of responsible language. Sensationalism, sensational headlines, or exaggerated descriptions can unintentionally confuse the public and can also increase their anxiety. Clear, factual, and calm and collected reporting is essential during crises. A calm reporter is what you need in times of crises, while panic-prone reporters should avoid the reporting during crisis, if you know what I mean.
Indeed, sir. Mr. Al-Ansari, for our final question for you, do you think the public has become more media literate in light of the current media climate in dealing with these crisis-related information?
Yeah, media literacy, yes, absolutely, especially lately. Yes, I believe the public has become significantly more media literate in recent years, especially here in our part of the world, as we are being bombarded with all types of information daily, hourly, especially on social media, and a lot of which is rubbish. There is still room for improvement, though. People today are being exposed to a massive amount of information from television, radio, online news sites, and social media platforms. As a result, many citizens and residents have become more cautious about the information they consume. Audiences are much more wary of false and misleading narratives and are understanding the importance of having to check multiple media sources and having to verify the information they receive before first believing it and then actually sharing it with family and friends. However, the challenge remains that misinformation often spreads faster than verified news, particularly on social media platforms. During regional crises, rumors can circulate widely before official confirmation becomes available, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. For instance, during various regional incidents in the Gulf over the past decade, unverified reports often appeared online within minutes, within seconds. In many cases, the public eventually turned to trusted sources, such as the Kuwait News Agency or the official government statements, so as they can confirm what was actually happening. This demonstrates that credibility still matters, and trusted media institutions continue to play a central role in guiding the public towards reliable information.
Well, Mr. Mazen Al-Ansari, I'd like to just thank you for joining us and giving us your time and your insights during this crisis.
Thank you for having me on the program. Thank you.
Of course. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Mazen Al-Ansari, the former Acting Assistant Undersecretary for Foreign Media of the Ministry of Information. And now, as we continue our coverage of the latest updates, on the international front, the U.S. President Donald Trump affirmed earlier that he is not ready to reach an agreement with Iran at this stage, stating that the conditions are not good enough yet. President Trump said Washington destroyed military targets on Iran's main oil hub of Kharg Island, threatening to strike its oil infrastructure if Tehran continues attacks that have halted most ship traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. This comes in as Iran warned that U.S. strikes constitute a stark violation of international law and the United Nations Charter, adding that Tehran would continue to exercise its right to self-defense under Article 51. Here's more in this report.
More than 15 explosions were heard on Iran's Kharj Island, a key oil export hub that handles most of the country's crude shipments, in the strikes launched by the United States on the island on Saturday. According to Iran's Fars news agency and other Iranian sources, at least 15 explosions rocked the island, with thick smoke rising targeting Iran's army defenses, a military base, and a helicopter hangar on it, but no oil facilities were damaged in the strikes. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that every military target on the island was totally obliterated, but the Iranian sources denied his claim, saying that the air defense system on the island was restarted around an hour after U.S. strikes. The Iranian armed forces said that it would destroy U.S.-linked energy infrastructure in the region if Iran's energy facilities were attacked. Kharj Island lies in the Persian Gulf, about 25 kilometers off Iran's coast, and accounts for about 90% of the country's crude exports. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said recent U.S. airstrikes and Israeli occupation strikes on Iran constitute a stark violation of international law and the United Nations Charter, adding that Tehran would continue to exercise its right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter.
What we are doing right now is just defending our dignity, our sovereignty against this unlawful, brutal attack. I think those who are used to just call both sides on an equal footing and do not distinguish between the victim and the aggressors should really take a responsible position. They have to call a spade a spade. They have to address the aggressors. They have to make them accountable for the brutal war they have launched, not only against Iran, but also against the whole region. The instability, the insecurity of the region is the direct result of the United States and Israel violation of the UN Charter.
On February 28, the Israeli occupation and the United States launched joint strikes on Tehran and several other Iranian cities, killing Iran's then Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, along with senior military commanders and civilians. The attack took place while negotiations were ongoing. On its part, Iran has responded to the attacks with multiple waves of missile and drone attacks, targeting the aggression and U.S. assets across the region.
In light of the attacks on Kharg Island and the growing threats on the global energy market, recent developments have raised fears of supply disruptions, volatile oil prices, and wider economic ripple effects, not only for the Gulf region, but for the global energy market and international trade as well. Analysts warn that prolonged instability around the strategic passage of the Strait of Hormuz could reshape production levels, shipping routes, and energy security calculations across the entire world. More on that in this report.
The cost of the U.S. military campaign against Iran is rising at staggering pace. According to a report by Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, the first 6 days of the fighting have already cost the United States more than $11.3 billion. The operation known as Operation Epic Fury is rapidly becoming one of the most expensive American military campaigns in recent decades. Analysts estimate that the war is burning through nearly $890 million every single day. In fact, the first 100 hours of the attack, which began on February 28th, alone cost about $3.7 billion. The Pentagon has informed Congress that week one alone has already exceeded $11 billion, raising serious questions about how long such a costly campaign can be sustained. The largest share of spending is driven by the deployment of U.S. air and naval forces. Air operations alone are estimated at $30 million a day, while naval operations add another 15 million dailies, with a ground operation adding further costs. For comparison, Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facility in June 2025, cost about $2.26 billion and lasted just 2.5 hours. The contrast highlights the enormous financial burden of a prolonged war.
More on the regional front. Overnight, the Israeli occupation attacks in southern Lebanon have killed at least 4 people. According to Lebanon's health ministry, the occupation forces' air raids have killed at least 850 people and injured more than 2,105 others since the latest war began on the 2nd of March. The violence has triggered mass displacement, with more than 700,000 people now registered on the government's online displacement platform, with some reports claiming up to 815,000 have been displaced. The UN Refugee Agency, meanwhile, has delivered about 168,000 emergency items to over 63,000 displaced people across more than 270 shelters. But its Lebanon operation is currently only 14% funded. As the conflict escalates, the Israeli occupation has issued immediate forced evacuation orders for residents in several neighborhoods of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. In response, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that the evacuation orders in Lebanon breach international law. And now moving to Palestine, where an Israeli occupation airstrike killed at least 8 Palestinians in the central Gaza Strip. Medical sources in Gaza also reported that the overall death toll from the occupation forces' attacks nears 72,250 deaths, with over 171,861 others injured since the war began on October the 7th of 2023. Harsh weather conditions have further worsened the humanitarian situation. Yesterday, on Saturday, a cloud of thick orange-tinted dust spread across Gaza, prompting first responders to urge residents, especially those with respiratory illnesses, to remain indoors and secure their tents. Most of Gaza's 2 million residents are displaced due to the war and are living in tents or damaged buildings with little protection, if any, from wind, rain, and sand. Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, the Israeli occupation killed at least 4 Palestinians while intensifying arrest campaigns across the occupied territories. In occupied Jerusalem, the occupation forces have continued to close Al-Aqsa Mosque for the 16th consecutive day, preventing worshippers from accessing the holy site. For the first time since 1967, Palestinians were barred from performing prayers and religious retreat there, including during the last Friday of Ramadan. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude tonight's live coverage, we urge all citizens and residents to closely follow the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Interior and all other relevant ministerial authorities. Remember to distinguish among the 3 different siren tones, understand what each signal means, and remain calm during any emergency. Seek your information only from official sources and avoid sharing unverified news or rumors, as spreading misinformation can lead to serious legal repercussions. Staying informed, vigilant, and responsible helps protect not only yourself, but your family and the community. Cooperation and adherence to official instructions are essential in maintaining safety, stability, and public trust during these difficult times. We pray to Allah Almighty for the continued safety and security of our beloved Kuwait and for the entire GCC region. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our special live coverage. However, stay tuned for the latest hour's news bulletin.